Welcome to the Disability Approval Path.
Hello and welcome back to Social Security and Disability, the Approval Path with Ms. Deborah Spector, lead attorney and managing partner at Spector & Lenz. I'm your host, Evan Mack. Now, Ms. Deborah has spent more than 40 years helping clients navigate the maze of disability benefits and make sure they get every dollar they're entitled to. In today's episode, we're talking about how long-term disability insurance, workers' compensation, and Social Security disability all fit together and what to watch out for so you don't end up with unexpected reductions or repayment demands. This is long-term disability benefits of workers' comp and Social Security and how to coordinate them without losing money. Ms. Deborah, my dear, how are you?
Good morning, my friend. I'm terrific. How are you? Welcome from Chicago.
I'm
Welcome
well.
from
I love
Chicago.
seeing you, so it's a good thing.
Good.
Ms. Deb, so listen, what are long-term disability benefits and how are they kind of different from, workers' compensation and Social Security disability?
Okay. Evan, you've gotten used to me, I think, by now, and I always
Yeah,
step back and say, let's take a macro view of what we're talking about here,
absolutely.
right? Social Security is an insurance program run by the federal government. It
Mhm.
protects us in the event of retirement, disability, or in some workers' cases, dependent benefits in the event of an early death.
Mhm.
Workers' compensation, we'll put Social Security over here. Workers' comp is over here. Workers' compensation is a system of programs run by the states, not by the federal government rather, that provides income for workers who are disabled in the course of employment. They're strictly regulated and they're covered by state law rather than federal law. And they're handled by, in Illinois, we call it the Illinois Industrial Commission, but
Mhm.
they're handled by state commissions. Appeals go to the state courts, not to the federal courts, unlike Social Security. And we've discussed a little bit of the coordination of benefits between those two programs because the notion is that one should not have a windfall, collect more in workers' comp over here and Social Security than you used to bring home. That's how
Mhm.
those two interplay. And they're both government managed government programs. Big differences with workers' comp. The money comes from your employer's insurance company, or
Mm.
in some small number of cases from a self insured employer. But the money's coming from the employer. With Social Security, the money's coming from the Social Security Trust Fund, at least in theory. Okay. Now there's a third concept for long-term disability. So some of those work comp cases are short-term, a short-term injury, a short time off work. Some are permanent. Again, a long-term concept. Long-term disability is a third animal. It's private. It's a program of insurance policies, not coordinated among themselves, that are carried by you or your employer through an insurance carrier, an insurance company like the Hartford or Unum or Principal or Liberty. And somebody contracts with the insurance company, by which I just mean buys a policy, and that's a contract with the
Mhm.
insurance company to protect the worker in the event of long-term disability, which for most policies is defined as more than 6 months. The
Mhm.
first 5 months are covered typically by a short-term disability policy. Just like with Social Security, if you'll remember, there are no benefits for the first 5 months. There's an elimination period. Benefits kick in with the 6th month. So we have federal, state, private, and they all interplay to some extent.
So, Ms. Debbie, how do these long-term disability insurance companies usually like they handle the claims? Do they require you to apply, or is there some other way they do that?
First of all, caveat, and there'll be several today. I don't handle long term disability claims.
Mhm.
Those claims are under a federal statute called ERISA, ERISA, which is an umbrella statute that covers insurance policies and all kinds of other things. And that statute governs the administration of long term disability claims. And there are lawyers who concentrate in ERISA who are really knowledgeable. There are a couple of great ones in Chicago to whom I've learned to just refer my ERISA disputes as they refer their Social Security disputes to us. and we don't cross over into each other's turf. Okay. But like anything else, almost anything else we're going to talk about, an application has to be filed. You can sit at home in your pajamas watching the morning news, dreaming about applying for Social Security or work comp or long-term disability. If that application isn't filed, nothing's going to happen, and your rights are not going to be attached. So application is crucial. For most workers, the application is obtained through their employer HR department or directly from the insurance company.
Can you tell the people at home what is a LTD offset, long-term disability offset? How can it kind of change the amount you take home each month?
You bet. So let's talk about the insurance company's requirement that some people apply for Social Security. Not everybody. There are three kinds of long-term disability plans without going too far into the weeds. And the issue is who paid for it. If you buy your own, and I think I still have one, I bought my own. I paid for it privately after tax dollars. I bought it. It's an insurance policy I bought, just like my car insurance. In America, many workers are covered by group long-term disability plans that are purchased by the employer, not by the employee. And it's a benefit, just like any other benefit you might contract for. Often it's in a union contract, or if you go to work for a big corporation in a white-collar job, you may find that one of your benefits is a long-term disability plan. That's paid for by the employer. And then sometimes there's a hybrid, like the employer will pay 60%, you pay 40%, something like that. Okay, now most of the group health plans, and those are the plans we most often see, where you get your long-term disability through a group plan negotiated by your employer with an insurance company. Most of those plans, and this is the key, require that you apply for Social Security disability. And when you get it, they reduce your benefit check from long-term disability. It's called an offset, and we've seen this concept before with workers' comp and with the old government pension offset, thank God, long gone. But with long-term disability, I'm just going to call it LTD, the policies usually say, if they're group policies, go apply for Social Security, pursue it, and we're going to reduce the amount of your long-term disability check by what we think you're going to get from Social Security. And when you eventually get it, because as we've discussed many times, it takes forever, when you eventually get it, you're going to owe us some money back for those months when we carried you in full, and we could have been reducing you had Social Security acted more quickly. Does that make sense?
It does, Ms. Deborah.
All right. Now, here are a couple of points about that. Depending on the policy, some people have to go as far as a hearing with their claims. I rarely see anything that has to go farther than an administrative hearing. The insurance companies know Social Security claims are generally, and we're talking here, 60 to 70% denied, and that they take a year or two to get approved if they're righteous claims. So they will work with people and continue paying their benefits. But when that Social Security check comes through, they will want their money back. They'll look at the award notice and say, hey, you got paid for 18 months during which we paid you a full benefit, and we could have been paying you a reduced benefit. Send us a check. What they do if you retain an attorney is generally, again, just speaking generally, they waive the attorney fee. So let's say at the end of that process, you owe a big insurance company, New York Life, $20,000 because of this offset, but you paid your lawyer 25% of that. They will waive that and not request that the attorney's fee be remitted to them. The insurance companies often will contract with groups. There's some lawyers involved, some non-lawyers involved, but they'll contract with outside companies to pursue the Social Security claim for you, just the way a private firm like ours would. The difference, of course, is that if you use one of those firms, you don't pay attorney fees. The entire offset goes back to the insurance company. There's no waiver. And then the difference is, because clients call me all the time and say, Deb, I've been referred to X, Y, and Z. to handle the case by my insurance company. Should I stay with them? And I always say, look, totally up to you. Here's what they do. Here's what we do. Here's how it works.
Right.
Their business model is based on getting the claims approved. They know what they're doing. They have an incentive to get their claims approved. They're under contract with your insurance company. So it's not that they're going to, blow it off. They know what they're doing. On the other hand, they work for the insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
So, I tell my clients, make your own decision. And generally, those organizations do not go beyond the hearing level and to the Appeals Council in Baltimore, and do not go to federal court. And at that point, a person would need a private attorney.
I was talking to a lawyer before, and he was kind of saying like insurance companies, like their kind of purpose is to get you as little as possible. Do you agree with that? or
Now, Evan, here's what I say. I'm not going to malign insurance companies. But like I just did in explaining what these outside organizations do, follow the money.
Okay.
Always follow the money. Same thing with the federal government, although the considerations there are a little bit different. There are all kinds of political and fiscal and other considerations in why Social Security denies so many claims. But with the private carriers, they are answerable to their shareholders.
Okay.
Follow the money. They do pay. I mean, you and I both know lots of people who get long-term disability benefits.
Yep.
It's not that they're never paid, but always be cognizant of how the business models work. And same thing with this interplay with Social Security. Look at how it works. And remember that with Social Security, everything is governed by federal law. The statute, the regulations, the rulings, the POMs, other things we've talked about that are the detailed instructions on how to apply Social Security. And ultimately, you have recourse to the federal courts. With the insurance companies, it's a matter of contract.
Okay.
The policy is a contract.
All right.
And so people call me and say, well, what about this, that, and the other? And I'll have to say, I can't even speak to it unless and until you send me the policy, because I don't know what you contracted for. I say it more nicely than that, but I need to know what the policy says. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah.
One other thing, if you retain a lawyer for Social Security help, the fees are strictly regulated. They're regulated by statute. Generally, our fees are 25% of past due benefits if there are benefits, and it's tightly controlled. There's a cap. There are all kinds of considerations. With long-term disability claims, if you need a lawyer, the fees are not controlled. And so you negotiate with your lawyer. And make sure, I do tell people this, even when I refer them to these ERISA lawyers I love so much, I say, make sure you understand going in what the fees are going to be. I don't want anyone surprised.
So, Ms. Deb, what about taxes? Are LTD benefits taxable? Does it depend on whether the premiums were paid by the employer or the employee? Is that a thing?
Well, Evan, why don't you just explain that? Right? You got it.
That's why we have you here, Ms. Deborah. I just sit here and ask questions. You got to regale me, my dear.
Okay. So, and I'm going to refer to my chart, but here's the way it works. It absolutely depends on who paid the premiums, whether it was the employer or you. If the employer paid the premiums, that's a benefit, and your long-term disability benefit is taxable. If you own the policy and you paid the premiums with after-tax dollars, there is no tax on your long-term disability. And if it was that hybrid I talked about, you pay tax on that percentage that reflects what you actually paid for. Now, this is the kicker, Evan. When you have long-term disability and Social Security, and you're reducing the amount of long-term disability because of the Social Security, then when they go back to calculate what you owe the carrier and what your back benefits are from SSDI, you could end up being theoretically taxed on both the Social Security and the long-term disability. Wow. Even though you don't see both, right? Because there's an offset. The LTD is reduced, or you have to reimburse it. And you could end up, if your overall income is high enough for taxation of your Social Security benefits, which we'll talk about in another segment, that
Mhm.
if you have to pay tax on Social Security and on LTD, even though you don't see both because of the offset, you could end up theoretically responsible for tax, different formulas, but tax on both. And I explain this to people early on if they have an LTD claim, and I just say, you got to suck it up. That's the
Mm,
way it works. No, it does not appear fair on the surface, but that's the way it works.
absolutely.
Okay,
So
similarly with certain work comp situations, you
right.
end up paying tax on money you never see because of the
Mm.
offset.
If someone's approved for this SSDI or after getting their LTD, will they have to pay back part of their benefits? I think you kind of touched on that, but like, but when does that happen? And like, how does that process work as far as like timing and things like that go?
So here's a typical scenario. Somebody becomes ill. We handle a lot of Parkinson's cases.
Wow.
We do a lot of Parkinson's. These days, because of people like me, we're doing my age group, we're doing a lot of dementia cases,
Hmm.
people who have long, great careers. We just took a nurse, 42 years as an RN who's
Wow.
developed Alzheimer's.
Wow.
So when that individual worked for a big hospital system, when she was let go because she was making errors, the thing to do, I tell people I like this sequence, is call HR, apply for short term disability if your employer has one. As that's in process, toward the end of that time, you apply for long term disability. Again, call HR, go online, whatever, get the application filed. Always file the application. All right. Along the way, I say to her, as soon as you get this moving with the short term, let's apply for Social Security disability for you because you're not going to be approved quickly. I hope you will, but you probably won't.
Mhm.
And you'll get that far ahead of the game. And then when the claim is processed for long term, short term doesn't care about Social Security because they only pay those first 5 months that
Mhm.
Social Security doesn't pay anyway, typically 5 months. But long term cares. So once that long term claim is on file, you'll be told, apply for Social Security, and then you'll be asked for a copy of the application. And periodically, with some carriers, not for all, they're all different, but periodically you'll be asked to confirm that you have a Social Security claim pending. Now, one thing that's really important to us is that for both the short term and long term private policies, you have to have your doctor signing off.
Mhm.
And they have great little forms. The insurance companies will often do it just based on these little forms, whereas Social Security wants, records up the wazoo. But the insurance companies will want, we call them attending physician statements. They want to know what your doctor says. They want a doctor signing a little form saying, I'm a neurologist. This person has Parkinsonian syndrome. She can't stand, she can't walk, she can't lift more than whatever per day. And I don't think she's returning to work. It's a bunch of check boxes.
Mhm.
And the insurance company will typically send that to the employer. Now, there are a few other things along the way that we're not going to cover in detail today, but when a worker becomes ill, one of the first things to take a look at is FMLA, the Family Medicine and Leave Act, to see if you can just take some time off. But what we're talking about are the long-term disabilities, people who we know aren't going to work for at least a
Mhm.
year.
So, Ms. Deb, to wrap things up, what's your best advice for keeping everything coordinated so clients don't lose benefits or maybe end up owing money back?
All right. Well, let's start with that last, okay? Because if this all works the way I just described, you will owe money back and you should owe money back, and that's okay. And the way that is calculated is at the end of the Social Security case, you get an award notice. Sometimes it's called award notice, sometimes it's notice of award. I don't care. It's an explanation of what they owe you from Social Security. The long term carrier needs to see that to make sure that they calculate the offset, calculate any reduction in monthly benefits, and just figure out all the money. You can't avoid it with one exception. You can't avoid it. It's just the way it works. You contract it for the long term. You're going to the government for what you're owed, and there's an interplay. What you can do is make sure you're in good contact with the insurance company. If you get to a point where you can't reimburse them, let's say you got your Social Security, they've been paying you the LTD, they want their $20,000 back, and you've had extraordinary expenses and you don't have the money, you can usually negotiate with the insurance company. What they will do is reduce your check going forward. So there are a lot of things at play here. If you need to consult an attorney for that, I recommend an ERISA, ERISA attorney. We can talk you through the Social Security end of the problem, but when it comes to actually dealing with the insurance companies, I think you need someone who really deals with them day in, day out, and who sues them. And we don't sue insurance companies, we sue the federal government.
Miss Deborah, thank you so much for your time, my dear.
Always a pleasure. Thank you. And thank you, Evan, because this one is a little bit dry and you kind of were able to stay awake.
I tried.
You're great. You're the best.
You're great. Listen, thank you guys for all tuning in. Balancing multiple benefit programs can be tricky, but with the right guidance, you can avoid costly mistakes and keep the support that you've earned. For help navigating your disability benefits, visit spectorandlens.com. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share this with someone that might find it helpful. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.